Welcome back, honey badgers. Welcome back to our next live session. Tonight we are talking about the way of the guide. Just going to give folks a minute to join us. And all right, cool. People are coming in. So we're going to start off our session with some breakout rooms. And the prompt is, if you have read Way of the Guide, we would want to invite you to just share what's popping out from that with you. What is resonating. If you haven't quite yet looked at Way of the Guide, maybe anything you've looked at in the course so far that how is the course landing with you? The most recent content. Last week we talked about scope of practice, and we've been talking about what is a forest therapy guide, what is not a forest therapy guide. We've been defining forest therapy, what it is, what it isn't, and I am going to set up breakout rooms as soon as I can find them. Ben, did you make me co-host?
Yes.
For some reason, I cannot see the breakout room option. Please hold. Your call is very important to us while we have some little technical moment here. Ben, can you actually just make me the host?
Yes, I can probably do that.
Let me see if that changes it.
There you go.
Here we go. All right. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are going to check in breakout rooms in groups of about 4 people. You'll have 12 minutes, so there's plenty of time for every person in the group to share. How is the content landing with you? Way of the guide. What is forest therapy? What is a forest therapy guide? And we will come back together in 12 minutes.
All right. So as Tam said, today we're talking about Way of the Guide. First, just a couple quick housekeeping notes. Just a reminder, if you can please submit your assignments as PDFs. I know I mentioned this last time, but just to remind you, if you need help figuring that out, you can easily Google it, or if that's just like really confusing, shoot us an email. And next week, we begin our small group calls. So this Honey Badger schedule is pretty simple. It's just same time, same place. You'll just use the main link, and then we're going to split the group in half. Half will go with Tam and do a breakout room. Half will stay with me. And we're going to dig in a little more to Way of the Guide. So I like to start by saying this is the hard part, and this is the beautiful part. Way of the Guide is not a technique. It's a philosophy, and it doesn't matter how much you understand it intellectually. It only really matters how much you can embody it. And Way of the Guide is a very challenging journey because it is very countercultural. We're trained to think that leaders exist to make things happen. But guides are not leaders, and guides don't make things happen. Now, this is really like the mind-bending part of this course for most people, because I'm pretty confident that most, if not all of you, have been in some kind of leadership role before. And in that role, you've been asked to produce certain results. And that's the function of your leadership role. And so this is very different because it will appear on the outside like you're the leader, and people might look at you like the leader and project on you that you're the leader. But you're not there to make anything happen. And just to be transparent, most people that take this training, this takes years to really learn. And by the end of today, you're not going to totally understand this, and that's okay. You're just getting started. So again, just being patient and being gentle with ourselves as we work through this. So what does it mean to be a guide? I think there are these 3 sayings that for me feel really important. The first is, one cannot open a rose with a crowbar. And this means that nothing beautiful and organic happens by force. The most incredible experiences that happen inside of this container just unfold in the right conditions. And guides are concerned with cultivating those conditions. This is mostly done by showing the strength and openness and gentleness of your heart. This is about a radical sense of hospitality for people, really loving people in a way that maybe they've never been loved before, just allowing them to be themselves. And if you give people that feeling, they blossom. It's not because you made something happen. It's just because you created this beautiful heart space where they can unfold. The second expression is, every law creates an outlaw. So when we're guiding, we might have a lot of internalized ideas about what we want people to do or what we want people to experience. And even if we don't verbalize this, people can feel it energetically. I don't know if you necessarily feel this, but I can always sense when I'm being judged. And it's often very subtle cues. It's not like someone is saying to me, like, I am judging you. It's the way they look at me or the way they speak to me, the tone of their voice. And so attempting to control people's process creates resistance and tension. And when there is that tension, people can't really unfold. They can't really open their hearts to this experience fully. Because, yeah, when we feel judged, we don't feel safe. So we're not creating rules for people to follow or trying to control people's process, either explicitly or implicitly. We're trying to create a space of maximum freedom. And then the third expression, tension is who you think you should be. Relaxation is who you are. And this is really about modeling this. This is about embodying this sentiment. When I'm guiding, I like to remind myself, I'm not here to impress anyone. I'm not here to be a big deal or a guru or a teacher. I'm trying to really just be who I am And in doing that, I create a field of permission for other people to feel that way too. So when we're guiding, so much of this is just about relaxing ourselves and not trying to be someone who you think you should be. The crazy maximum conclusion of this, when I guide, I try not to be concerned about the benefit to others. Because if I'm concerned about other people having a good time or getting healing or receiving some kind of revelation about themselves, then I'm clouded by that desire and I'm going to start manipulating the field and trying to make those outcomes happen. This is really challenging because I'm willing to put money on every single one of us really wants to help people and really wants to help the earth. But when we approach the work with that desire, we start to try to figure out how to make that happen, how to force it to happen. It's again just trying to open the rose with the crowbar. And so I try to just remember that things have a way of working themselves out. And most of what I'm responsible for is my own relaxation and not trying to make other people have big experiences. So the foundation of guiding and the way of the guide is a radical sense of trust. And this comes kind of in three directions. First is trusting the forest, or we could say trusting the more than human world. When I started guiding, I don't think I had this trust yet, because it's hard to have this trust when you've never seen it actually happen. And so I don't expect you to have this trust yet. But this first level of trusting the more than human world is critical for you to be able to step back from trying to manipulate people's process. When we have this foundational trust in the more than human world to do the work, we can allow it to do the work. When we don't, we're always going to be getting in the way. And getting in the way of the forest makes the work far less potent. The second level is trusting the participants. This is also very challenging because most leadership positions are based in this idea that the people you're leading aren't really trustworthy, which is why they need you to lead them. I think a lot of this goes back to our childhoods, that our parents didn't trust us and our teachers didn't trust us and our community leaders didn't trust us. And so we were subject to a lot of control. In this practice, trusting the participants is incredibly important. When they feel trusted, they can go so much deeper than if they don't. And the third layer is trusting the process. In our next big group call, we're going to talk about the standard sequence. And the standard sequence is effectively our process. And the standard sequence really works. It's been basically in the same form since ANFT started. We've trained thousands of guides in doing it this way. And it works. And I don't expect you to trust the process today because you've maybe never seen it work, or if you have, you've seen it from the participant side. When you start guiding, you are going to experience a massive growth in your level of trust because you're going to actually start seeing it work. It's okay to be wildly skeptical about everything we're teaching you right now because it's all theoretical. So when you trust, you offer freedom. And when you judge, you limit freedom. And this is the fundamental challenge of guiding this process. Because we all struggle to really trust. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. And I'd like to invite you to discuss what trust feels like. What does it feel like in your body when you are trusted? How would you describe that feeling? How does your body know that you are trusted? Try to talk about this really from the somatic experience. What does your body feel like when you are in the presence of someone that trusts you? So we're going to go into breakout rooms of 4 for about 12 minutes. And then we'll come back and do a little bit of harvesting. We ready, Tam? Let's go.
We are ready.
No one wants to come back. All right, welcome back, everyone. So maybe we can harvest a little bit from your conversations. If you want to use the chat box, yeah, what came up in that conversation? And if you want to just raise your hand or just start talking, you can use your voice also. And Tam, if you could maybe just mirror back what comes through the chat.
Speaking for myself, I found it easier to think about what trust doesn't feel like in my body, like how I feel when, like as a kid, I was caught putting a freshly baked cookie into the trash because I realized it was too close to dinner time. Like, so I found it helpful to ease into it, thinking about what trust doesn't feel like, and then kind of the opposite, because I think sometimes it's hard to name like the thing that's going well. So thinking about the opposite helps me.
Right on.
And in the chat, we have feels like melting, viscous liquid like lava flow. Feels aware, alert, energized, full. Lightness, ease, relaxing, gentle exhale. I feel that being familiar with the forest, you will guide. I feel that being familiar with the forest you will guide in could be helpful in trusting the process and trusting participants. With trust, body feels balanced, eyes are soft, voice is soft. Calmness, relaxation, familiar. Absorption, warmth, reciprocation, gratitude. No expectations, safety, love, freedom. From the group, breakout group, grounded, Chris. Breakout group, grounded, Chris. Grounded, chorus, free to inhabit fullness of side spaces, openness to communicate, sensations like edges dissolving, becoming porous, spaciousness. Trust allows for deep sleep, ease of sleeping, relaxing, warm, calm.
Wonderful. So yeah, you might have different ideas about how it feels in your body, but whatever that feeling is, that's what we're trying to create for people. That's the hardest thing we do. Everything else we're going to teach you is so much easier than doing that. So coming back to our presentation here. So trust you can also think of as a sense of radical hospitality. And the author, Robert Romanishine, who, if you haven't read his work, is fabulous. He says, hospitality is an attitude of patient waiting, an attitude which knows how to wait without hope, because it knows that hope would be hope for the wrong thing, because it knows that hope would empty the presence, or I'm sorry, empty the moment of its hidden presence. So we all have a lot of hopes when we're guiding. We probably have hopes like, I hope people are enjoying this. I hope people are connecting with nature. I hope people are healing. I hope people have wonderful, beautiful experiences. I hope that the deer show up and sit next to us, or the eagle comes overhead, or a rainbow comes out, whatever it is. And when we're in this place of radical hospitality, we're not really hoping for anything specifically. We're not hoping that something is going to happen, because we don't know what is going to happen, and that's kind of where the magic is. So when you are encountering a sense of hope for something, maybe you can remember this part of the presentation. And instead of hoping, just patiently waiting, just being curious about what is going to emerge. Because when we have these hopes, it creates tension. When we're hoping something is going to happen, we want to make it happen. And it's really hard to fight that temptation when we encounter it. So, trust as radical hospitality. I like to think that this is a little bit like hosting a party. Maybe you've hosted a party before. And if not, maybe you've been to a party. So we're going to go into breakout rooms again, and I'd like you to just discuss what is the objective of a party. And as the host, is the party success based on how you manage the guests there? Are you telling people what to do at the party? And is the host responsible for creating relationships between the people at the party? And what does a host really do anyway? So we're going to go into breakout rooms. We'll put these questions in the chat, and then we'll come back and harvest a little bit about what does it mean to host in a sense of radical hospitality. All right. So again, just harvesting from that conversation, either using the chat box, or you're welcome to unmute and just share what is the function of the host.
I would say a host, is to welcome people. And again, then we talked about it depends what kind of a party or where it is, but if it's at your home, you don't know what people are bringing to the party. And as a host, a lot of times you feel like you should introduce people, take them over to where there's food. See, there's different things you want to do, but you kind of move around. You can't introduce people and know what's going to happen. But you might, again, I think it's like the invitation thing. You can try to invite someone into a different circumstance or not, but it's you can control the welcome. I think you can have people in a welcoming place as a party.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jane. Anyone else? Or Tam, you want to mirror a little bit?
To welcome everyone equally, creating and sharing a space where the host feels so comfortable that everyone else feels comfortable as a result. Welcoming, inviting, warm, setting up logistics, getting things ready. Layers of playing host. Where's the bathroom, to serving food, to saying, hey, you went on vacation here, go talk to that person who went there, to help form connections, feeling good in your skin, a grand welcoming such as, I am so glad to see you and so happy you are here. What an honor it is to be here in this space with you, a deep sense of gratitude to be among, oops, I just got lost. Deep sense of gratitude to be among one another's presence, welcoming others, warm, facilitating an atmosphere of safety. Hosts invites and welcomes, objective of party, bring people together, facilitate, not control, welcome without judgment. You can control environment, unlike ANFT, but you can still not control the experience a guest has. Be prepared, a warm welcome that invites warmth, safety, and trust.
Right on. So yeah, you can't really make people be friends with each other. I always think it's really awkward when someone tries too hard to like set you up with someone and be like, you two are going to be best friends. Talk to each other. And it's so awkward, right? You're like, hi, like, yeah, what's your deal? Because now there's this incredibly heavy expectation. And it makes it really hard to form an authentic connection. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here in the chat and what Jane shared that it's like, yeah, this is all about Way of the Guide, but really about honoring that there's a sense of mystery in the party. Like, let's say you're inviting 25 people over and they don't all know each other. And at the end of the night, some of those people are going to have become friends, and some of them aren't. And you don't know what's going to happen in the container of that party. But you can create that atmosphere where something magical is possible. All right. So when we're guiding a forest therapy walk, the kind of neat thing to think about is that you're making like a party, but the guests are the humans and all the beings of the more than human world. So you're hosting a party with humans and birds and trees and stones and waters, and you're creating a space where these relationships can blossom. Sometimes we talk about this as a container. And the container is really just the field that you're creating. And just like the party, this field is characterized by relaxation, non-judgment, and trust. It's also super awkward when you go to a party and the host is like super duper stressed out, right? It's like, I've been to a party where the host is constantly asking everyone, "Are you having fun?" And it's so stressful because you feel like you have to be having fun now. And part of the magic of this container, but also the party, is it's not just about one dimension of emotional experience. Sometimes I've been to parties and you get into a conversation with someone about like your mom dying or a divorce or whatever is going on in your life, right? And you need to talk to someone about that stuff. It's not just about having a good time. It's about creating a space where people can form these relationships, and then whatever comes out of that can be the healing. So if hospitality is the absence of hope, let's start with the chat box. What are some things that you might hope for when guiding a walk? And let's not be embarrassed to admit that we have hopes. It's perfectly natural. I'm just curious, what hopes might you be carrying when you guide a forest therapy walk? I see Jacqueline has kicked us off with that everyone stays safe. Now, that's a pretty okay hope to have. And that's part of the professionalism of being a guide, is that, yeah, you're responsible on some level for people's safety. So that one's a little bit outside of this question. Yeah, I hope that no one breaks their leg and I have to use my wilderness first aid skills, because that's kind of a bummer, right? So let's just mark that one in the it's okay to have that hope. What else we got? Jess, good weather. Yeah, good weather is nice. Bad weather is also nice. Elizabeth, that people feel safe. Yeah. I promise you, not everyone is going to feel safe. Kathleen, safety, yes. Angel, that people can be present in the moment. Wouldn't that be nice if everyone was always present in the moment? Christy, I hope I would be good at it. Yeah. That's a toughie, right? We want to feel like we're good at it. But if we're really concerned about being good at it, it's really hard to just do it. Safety, that ants aren't attacking and the mosquitoes aren't overwhelming. We've got a good story about that one. I'll tell you later. Weather, animals, safety. Yeah, magical, awesome time. You know, sometimes you'll guide walks and it will be super magical, awesome time. And sometimes it's just not going to be that way. And the weirdest thing about that is that from the inside perspective of the participants, they might be having a magical, awesome time and you just have no idea. So that one, like many of our hopes, is really like it's a thing with the problem of our subjectivity, that what we're perceiving is not always the reality at hand. Kathleen, everyone walks away with at least one nugget of learning or reflection. Yeah, that would be awesome. You know, on this one, I like to tell myself that even if nobody has a particularly wonderful time, it is such a massive triumph to get people outside for 2 hours. Even if that's all it is, that is a massive success. People feel how awesome nature is, that people leave with a deeper sense of embodiment, that everyone can sink into the space, that people want to stay the whole time and get something out of it, that they're relaxed, they can connect to nature, that ghost memories will be invited to play in the experience, hoping that guests will feel the time they spent was a positive one. Hope that participants don't think it's a waste of time, that everyone feels something deeper, healing, belonging, vulnerability, grief, depth, fun, weather is accepted. I hope that everyone feels seen and loved by the forest. I hope that they will want to make it a part of their lives, that everyone feels peace and a moment of calmness, that people feel trust, and my video is acting up again. They have an adventure. I hope that people don't blame me if they don't have an experience, that there won't be a share dominator, that everyone will be able to see the beauty of color. So yeah, it's really natural to have hopes. The more you can approach the work without these hopes, the stronger the outcomes will be. Because again, this is about your relaxation. When people come on the walk and they sense that the guide kind of has expectations and hopes, there's this psychodynamic thing that happens where, depending on your personality type, you either want to satisfy the person with the hopes, or you're kind of a rebellious type and you want to withhold that. If you don't have any expectations, you can never be disappointed because there's nothing that you're hoping for. Then you're learning how to accept what it is for each and every person. And it really is always going to be different for everyone. Every group, every walk, every different setting, it's always going to be a very different experience. Kathleen, should the guide solicit expectations from the participants? I like to encourage people to be without expectation. I think there's kind of like a confirmation bias problem. If you have an expectation, then you're trying to make it happen. And when you're trying to make it happen, you're so focused on that that all the other things that are happening are not entering your conscious awareness. I think the really powerful stuff that happens without people having any expectation of it. It's a surprise. Things happen and people are a little bit shocked, like, whoa, what was that about? Should the guide be concerned with how some in the group are acting and how it's affecting others? The answer for me is yes, but the bar is extremely high. I've only ever asked someone to leave a walk once. And this is a little bit of a long story, so I'm not going to share the whole thing. But essentially, she was there with her boyfriend, and they were talking about their sex life very, very loudly the whole through What's in Motion, which is when I asked them to basically, I said, you know, it's okay to talk about whatever you want to talk about, but can you please do it at a volume where other people are not privy to your conversation? And they got offended and left, which was great. That to me felt like it was over the line of nobody can actually be here now because everyone's attention is on these people. And so if that has happened, if people are behaving in such a way where people are incapable of not orienting their attention towards them, then I am concerned. But if people are just being weird or maybe a little bit off or a little bit offensive, a little bit whatever, then it becomes a practice of radical hospitality. Then it becomes a practice of, can I love you despite these things that are coming up? And we're going to talk more later about dysregulation if people are having big emotional experiences. But in short, to answer that now, that's very welcome. It's okay to cry, and it's okay to have a breakdown, and it's okay to have big emotional experiences during the walk. That's not something that I'm concerned about. I might use some different techniques if that comes up, but it's not like, uh-oh, this is not the right thing. This is not what should be happening. If that happens, it's what's happening, and that's okay. So, Pam and I would like to tell you some Way of the Guide stories. Tam, do you want to like trade off like one and one back to back?
Sure,
You want me to go first?
sure.
Okay. Um, have I already told you all this story about the woman with the cell phone and talking to her daughter? I feel like I might have told you this story already. No? Okay, I'm seeing like shaking faces. Okay, so this was at a training in Maryland. Tam and I were actually both at this training. And we were training a group of guides, and in those days, we would recruit people from the public to come, and the guides in training would guide them. So a woman showed up with her adult son who has autism, and basically she got a phone call during What's in Motion, and she picked up the phone and she walked to the parking lot, and she proceeded to talk on the phone for the entire next hour and a half. And at some point, they're about to do tea ceremony. Her son comes and says, you know, hey, mom, we're going to do tea ceremony. Can you come and, you know, be here as we end the walk? And so they're wrapping up the walk, and they say, you know, what would you like to share to feel complete? And the woman says, you know, I live with my adult son, and it's a lot. I take care of him all day. And I got a phone call from my daughter who lives in another state, and I very rarely get to talk to her. And when I got the phone call, I looked over at my son, and he was having such a good time with you all, and he felt so safe here that I knew I'd go take this phone call. And I just want to thank you because I got to spend time with both my children today, which I haven't been able to do in years. And it was really interesting debriefing this with the guides because every single one of them were really mad that she took that phone call. They were like, this is not about being on your phone. This is about connecting to nature, and this is about relaxing, and this is about getting away from technology, and she's not doing it right. And I said, this practice is about relationships. And you created a space where she was able to do something really important to her. And maybe the forest can even work through cell phones. Okay, Tam, what you got?
It's so hard, these moments. I'm like, there's so many stories, but I can't think of a single one. But the one that's coming to me in this moment, this was a few years ago. I was contacted by someone who was in a master's program in the school, and they were doing like a, what do you call it, a case study, I guess, on trying to prove whether or not forest therapy was effective in supporting people with substance use disorder. And it was pretty anecdotal, but arranged with me to guide sessions once a week through a center that was like a support center, resource center for people affected by substance use. And the people that came were incentivized to come, that if they came to a certain number of sessions, they got a gift card to some like local store, not like grocery store. And it was, it was a pretty rough crowd in terms of like, there's some like really wounded people in this crowd, like fresh off the streets, out of prison, people just kind of trying to pick themselves up after some like serious drug addiction. And I would say like some of them were slightly curious and some of them were just like, I need to get this gift card at the end of these 8 weeks. and and I just remember this one person on the very first day, like I'm giving my introduction and he's just sort of like, how long is this gonna be? Because I gotta get to work and I gotta do this, and how long we gonna be out here, And he was just so antsy and so just like there to check a box. And I watched him every week come back and kind of relax a little bit more and like get into it. And we didn't have a long time. I think our sessions were maybe an hour and a half. They were a little short. And anyway, by the end, this dude was fully in, and like he was just, I mean, if I was sort of looking into like, how can we make this person a forest therapy guide? Like, how can we find some funding to send him through the program? Because he then was like recruiting other people from the center. He was there, he was lingering, he was early, he was staying after to chat. And on the last walk we did together, he just kept saying like, this is good medicine. This is the thing. This is what matters, And it was just like such a palatable moment from somebody who is just like, just there for the gift card.
Yeah, I've got like a similar one to that where very early in my guiding career, I took 3 people out, and there was a man who was like an executive. I don't know why he signed up, but basically in our first sharing circle, I said, so what are you noticing? And he said, I'm noticing how much I hate this. I was like, oh, okay. And, it's like, all right, thank you for sharing. Then we do what's in motion. What are you noticing right now? Yeah, I'm noticing this is a complete waste of my time. All right, thank you for sharing. Do some more invitations. We get to the last invitation and he comes back for tea, and he has this crazy story where he's like, I was sitting with this tree and there were all these ants on the tree. And I was watching them and thinking to myself, these ants are wildly disorganized. If I were in charge of these ants, they would be way more efficient. And then I stepped back and heard myself say that and said, I have a problem with control. And I really need to work on that. And it was like this amazing thing where it was like resistance, 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 resistance. And if I had just said, well, then why don't you leave? We never would have gotten to the place where he actually had that breakthrough, right? Okay. I had one where I had taken a bunch of people out and there was a journalist with us, and I actually didn't really get the end of this story until the article came out. But there was a woman that came with her husband, and I did this invitation that was kind of like a treasure hunting kind of thing. And I didn't see any of this happen, but it came out in the article. And we were in like a canyon, and she wanted to climb up the canyon wall to see the view of the mountains. And so she was climbing up and she would fall and slide down and climb up and fall and slide down and climb up and fall and slide down. And she said, you know, I was feeling really frustrated. And then I looked over and I saw my husband sitting by the creek, and I went down and sat next to him. And without speaking, he just reached out and held my hand. And that was the treasure. And it was like, that's amazing. If I had been there, it probably would have freaked me out that you were falling down a hill like repeatedly. But that's one of those moments where it's like, trust the forest and trust the people and trust the process. Like, this is all unfolding in a way that has internal logic to it that you don't understand. There was once I was guiding a walk, and I don't know if you guys have seen this. Some people like to like trail run with a boom box. It's not like a full boom box, you know, a little like Bluetooth speaker. Drives me crazy. But we're doing a very quiet, contemplative invitation, you know, like sit spot or something. And this guy runs through and he's playing that Celine Dion song, My Heart Will Go On. And I was just like, no, this is so bad. And then someone came back to the circle and, like, okay, what are you noticing? And she said, you know, I was listening to the trees, and then it's like the trees were singing this really beautiful song about their hearts. And it was like the highlight for her. There was this one walk I did where this was also at a training. It was in Northern California, and my walk started at around 9 a.m. And at 9 a.m., it was about 105 degrees outside. And we started Pleasures of Presence kind of half shade, half sun, but by the end, it was full sun. And I said, okay, what are you noticing? And people were saying things like, I'm noticing I'm getting a sunburn. I'm noticing I feel hot and uncomfortable. I'm noticing I don't like being here. I'm like, all right, cool. So we do what's in motion through this meadow, and then we bend down into this creek, and it has all these blackberry vines full of fruit. And I didn't even say anything to people directly, but everyone just started eating the blackberries and they took their shoes off and they're in the creek. And, you know, it's okay, what are you noticing right now? And the woman who had really been like pretty grouchy about the sunburn, she said, you know, this feeling of the burn on my neck and the sensation of the cold water on my feet and the sweet juice of the blackberry dripping down my chin. This is exactly how I remember my childhood. I'm feeling exactly like a 5-year-old girl right now. And it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, you wouldn't have gotten that without the sunburn part. So there's these things that happen where it seems like, uh-oh, something really go wrong here. And most of the time, it's actually just part of the process. Tam, do you have another story?
Yeah, you know, I was guiding some youth, like teenagers, and again, another group of people that was incentivized to come, that they weren't like choosing to be there, which is kind of my least favorite groups to guide. I want people to choose to be there. That's one of my hopes and dreams. But I had these youth, and at first they're just like, they're not into it, we went around the circle, like I'm like, you don't have to share, but we'll just go around and you can pass if you want to pass. And this one young guy just kept kind of like, every time it was his turn to share, he'd just kind of stare at me and be like, I don't have anything to share. I'm like, okay. And then it was like we did a tree story as part of our introduction round early on, and when it got to him, he was like, I hate trees because a tree fell on my brother's car once, and so it was like, this is the vibe. And then at some point on the walk, like towards the end, we're by this little pond, and I invite us to do like a group sit spot together on this beach and just sit by the pond. And this kid stands up and he starts picking up rocks and throwing these pretty big rocks into the pond. And there was sort of like an adult person with their group who just looks kind of panicked a little bit. And I basically just got up and I started throwing rocks too. And then someone else got up and started throwing rocks. And then, basically we were all just throwing rocks into the pond. So even though I gave an invitation for a sit spot, it turned into like a rock throw. And then at the end of the walk, one of their adults like came up to me and they were just like, oh, thank you so much for not, shutting that down or like policing that. Like these youth are just constantly being told to not do everything they're doing. And it just sort of like hit me in this moment, like how rare it is for people, especially young people who are like in the systems of institutions of like, there's just not really a lot of invitation for liberation. And something just so simple, like throwing rocks. And I can hear the criticisms of like, what if you hurt a fish, or like, what if a frog got taken out, and all that. And it's like, in that moment, we connected through throwing rocks. And this person who was just super resistant, like found a way in and kind of became the guide, really.
Right on. So we probably have like 10 million stories, but we'll leave it at that for now. So we say the forest is the therapist, the guide opens the doors. You are not responsible for making anything happen. You are not responsible for making anything happen. This is so nice. A lot of us come from work where we are very responsible for making things happen. The forest is going to do 90% of the work. The challenge here is actually letting the forest do 90% of the work because we're so used to doing 100% of the work that it's probably going to feel pretty weird to not be doing the majority of the work. Your judgments about what someone needs or what they should experience are only going to get in the way of their authentic relationship with the more than human world. This is the beautiful part. This is the challenging part. Some of you may know Wayne Dyer. He said, "You will see it when you believe it." It's hard to believe. Like I told you at the beginning, this is all theoretical for you at this point. And I don't expect you to take my word for it. But when you start guiding, if you can believe that the forest is capable of doing 90% of the work and that you don't actually need to do so much, that's when the magic is going to happen and you're going to see it happen. So maybe you have a journal, or you could use your computer, or if you don't have anything to write on, you could just close your eyes. And let's just take a minute to digest this. What are you noticing? Now, you may have questions, and I'm going to invite you to bring those to our small group discussion next week. For now, maybe just a few shares if anyone wants to share how this is landing for you, what you're taking away from this, revelations, curiosities, comments, witnessing. And I'd love to hear your voice, but if you want to use the chat, you can do that too.
I wrote down, this was something my psychiatrist had said to me before. And she was like, well, think of your son. He's one now. And he was like, he's not worried about the past. He's not worried about the future. He's not even worried about the now. He's just there experiencing things. And so I wrote down in my book to be like Henry, and you know, he's only in the here and now with little to no expectations. And so I think that's kind of a good mentality to bring in as a guide in terms of releasing any of my hopes or expectations is just like, ooh, we're here and now.
Yeah, thanks, Kat.
For me, I'm really enjoying the concept of relaxing and trust, but at the same time, I'm experiencing a bit of tension with it because of experience guiding in a different context where there was trust and then trust being broken. Where, you know, so I'm experiencing a bit of tension with the concept of radical trust, having that experience in the past where I did trust people and then it didn't go well.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
When we welcome with radical hospitality and a whole heart, when we trust and let be, that is where there is room for magic, sacredness, and healing to occur.
Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, Julia.
Just think about emptying myself, just emptying myself out. Take my mind and put it down.
Yeah, there's a great Zen story about the student goes with the Roshi to the lake, and the Roshi takes a sieve and says, okay, fill it up with water. And so the student is, trying to fill the sieve up with water. It's not working so well. And says, well, how do you do this, master? And she takes the sieve and just throws it in the lake. Says, there, now it's full of water. Rachel.
I'm just thinking this way of the guide, and I just at the end of our reflection that came to me, this experience of collective wonder, that even you guys sharing your stories, it was just like this this kind of stay amazed like little kids. And and then I got nervous because I don't when I'm walking in the woods, I'm always by myself. And if I'm taking someone, I'm taking my kids, or I'm taking someone so I can impress them with how many that I'm like a walking nature guide, like identify all the trees and point out all the things. And I'm like, that's not actually true. For the past like month, I've been walking with my dog, and he's not on a leash. He's just like off sniffing and doing the things. And I've been like picking up sticks, and we've just been in the woods together and he's having his experience. So I'm going to try to be in the woods with people like I am with my dog. So that's what I'm going to try to work on.
Thanks, Rachel. Jill.
This kind of I see a lot of parallels to different things in my life, but one thing I was thinking about was Shavasana, which in yoga classes, traditionally you end lying on your back, and it's a time of rest. And there's like a couple different ways that people approach leading that. And I think that maybe when I did my yoga training, which was about, a quarter of the way through the amount of years I've been practicing, it was real zeitgeisty to like kind of like do Shavasana adjustments, like rub people's necks and stretch them out and wave essential oils. And I think like my teacher was always like, you should not be touching people. You should just be meditating during that time. You should be chill and holding that space for them. And I think like when I first started teaching, I was like, maybe I should be like rubbing people or like stretching them, or because of that sort of desire to, like you were talking about, these hopes. Like, I hope that this person enjoys this. And maybe if I'm active, that they will enjoy it more because they're receiving touch or whatever. And the longer I've taught, the less I do. And I feel like now I can trust that process is going to work over the years. So it really made me think about that as like just a little analogy for the bigger practice of this guiding.
Thanks, Jill. And we got Kathy. I'm noticing the feeling of the forest that is willing and able to be the healer. Thank you, Kathy.
I am feeling just very light right now, just knowing that there's a freedom of expectation. And I've always had this saying that nature will always provide. So it just feels like there's a sense of connection and being emotionally touched during this training. So thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Hi, it's Brooks here. I was just really identifying with Jill, sort of noticing how all of the different worlds come together, especially around hospitality, because that's how I make my money, is working in restaurants and hotels, and have been trained in hospitality. And there's this idea that 51% of hospitality is that emotional, the soft skills, and then the 49% is technical. Like, can you open a bottle of wine? Can you do all those things? So just sort of finding where you can stop managing expectations in the form of hospitality, in the name of hospitality, I guess. And just let people have the experience that they're going to have. Yeah.
Thanks, Brooks. Well, Tam, any closing nuggets on Way of the Guide?
I feel like Way of the Guide is like a way of life sometimes. I mean, there are different scenarios where something different is definitely needed, but I noticed that I can approach a lot of situations as like invitations, even if they're not meant to be invitations. But just even that freedom in myself of like the container of my experience just out in the world. I find this really helpful. And I'm a human, so of course I have like hopes and dreams, you know. I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised by what happens. And I feel so much relief by not having to be in charge of people's experience. That is such a relief and such a open pathway towards like deeper connection as a result. Not necessarily with me, but just with the experience, just with whatever. And it's really radically different than a lot of other kinds of like facilitated experiences. And I love that about this. I love how different it is. And Ben looks a little frozen. There you are.
And Pao is noticing action equals reaction is growing inside. All right. So wishing you a fabulous remainder of your morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it may be. And please bring your questions to our class next week. So we're meeting next Tuesday, same time, same place, for our small group discussion about Way of the Guide. And then the following week, we will be presenting on the standard sequence. So now we've kind of built the philosophical foundation. And in our next module, we're going to turn towards the technical side of guiding, learning about standard sequence, language of invitation, partnership with the more than human world. So yeah, as always, if you need anything, hit us up on the Honey Badger Gmail account. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. Rawr, Honey Badger.